Another deluge of new metal albums for you this month. Hope you left some room. These are my favorite metal albums of May 2024, starting with Adversarial with Solitude with the Eternal. It's been almost a decade since this Canadian Blackened death metal band released the incredible Death, Endless Nothing, and the Black Knife of Nihilism in 2015. So when this showed up in my inbox by complete surprise, I was instantly stoked. Few bands so effectively fuse the raw and unkempt aesthetic of 90s black metal with the sheer brutality of death metal. I frequently describe music like this as falling into a deep chasm, but that's not nearly enough for this one. Adversarial is falling into a deep fire-spewing chasm while being beaten mercilessly by gremlins armed with barbed wire baseball bats all the way down.
I'm talking about hardcore death metal, sometimes referred to as black metal.
Next we have Hellbutcher with Hellbutcher. Following the disbanding of 90s black metal band Niflheim in 2022, frontman Hellbutcher started this new project, once more leaning on old school sentiments with plenty of thrash and speed metal influence. Fans of Venom and early Bathory in particular should enjoy the jangly bass lines and emphasis on speed, but perhaps also fans of more modern takes like Midnight. Just a very classic, somewhat retro-sounding release that just oozes an aesthetic of black leather, spikes, and inverted crosses. Simple, but very effective and devilishly fun. Then we have Beaten to Death with Sunrise over Rigor Mortis. One of the few modern grindcore groups I feel deserves the spotlight, and yet I rarely hear anyone talk about them. These Norwegians, alongside the likes of Napalm Death, have really taken a somewhat tired genre that's repetitious by design and crafted it into something with their own fresh, unique voice. And despite stating that they have all aged horribly since their last album in 2021, they show no signs of slowing down. 1 minute it's pure chaos complemented by their usual trademark bass tone, the next it's a hard left turn into unexpected melodic sludge and post-metal directions, as well as some others I don't even want to spoil here. True to the genre's roots, the album may only be 19 minutes, but I assure you that only makes every second all the more impressive and at times strange the further you get in. Then we have Vaticinal Rites with Cascading Memories of Immortality. This London-based old-school death metal band is relatively fresh to the scene, formed in 2020, but are already making waves for me with this debut LP. Plenty of Cannibal Corpse in the vocals and Floridian grooves, but also European influence in the spooky harmonized guitar leads on tracks like Plead for Termination. Nothing particularly mind-blowing here, you've definitely heard this sound before going back to the 90s, but another case of taking that old sound and executing it to perfection over a consistently tight 36 minutes. And they will sometimes surprise you when the atmosphere opens up on tracks like Siphoning Plasma from the Gods. Then we have Rotting Christ with Pro Xristoy. The longest gap between albums yet, with 5 years since Heretics, and definitely coming in a similar vein right from the top with the big brass, eerie throat singing and chanting as if we're rowing some massive Harkonnen slave ship. Lots of emphasis on atmosphere that especially wowed me in the second half. La Lettura del Diavolo, The Farewell, Pretty World, Pretty Dies, and especially Pixlax Docs are excellent. Yggdrasil is also quite the epic, complete with sounds of clashing swords, and likewise Sorsha, which may actually be the best closer of their career. Far from my favorite Rotting Christ album, check out the tier list that I did for that, but I always enjoy what they put out. Yo, we have plenty more albums to go, but if you're enjoying the video so far, as always, hit the like button, it really helps me out. Also, comment below your favorite albums from this month. And if you haven't already and you enjoy the videos, I do ones like this about twice a week. You can subscribe, or also, if you're already a subscriber, you can become a member and get some access to extra perks. But next up we have Esodic with De Facto de Jure. Formed in Jordan in 2003, Esodic fused death and thrash metal with Middle Eastern instruments for some truly stunning atmosphere. Think Al Namrud, but with more of a death metal punch. This EP may only be 4 songs too, but all of them will definitely take you to another place. Probably a bit of a stereotype, but I listen to this and imagine myself traveling through beautiful desert landscapes on camelback. And I'm a sucker for any kind of traditional instrumentation in my metal, but there's just something about this particular style and region that is extra captivating for me. Then we have Dååth with the Deceivers. This is the Atlanta-based band's first album in 13 years and their 5th since 2004. Most descriptions I see related to them start with death metal, but I'd argue that their sound has much more of a groove metal foundation that then fuses in elements of death and melodic death alongside some great symphonic flourishes too. The latter leading to some truly grand, almost flesh god apocalypse sounding tracks like Hex Unending. This is thanks to Jesse Zuretti, who has also worked with Amorphous and Nightmare. And notably, their current lineup also includes Crim of Decapitated and Septic Flesh and Rafaelo Trujillo of Obsidious and Obscura. With that kind of experience and pedigree, you know you can expect something special. Then we have Vale of Pnath with Between the Worlds of Life and Death. 5 years in the wake of their Accursed EP, and 8 since their last full length, this Denver band is ready for more ferocious tunes. Previously, I've compared them to the likes of Allegion, the Black Dahlia Murder, and Inferi, but it feels like this time around they've traded much of the tech death in favor of behemoth-esque blackened stompers like Silent Prayers and symphonic moments on par with Dimmu Borgir. This shift in sound ultimately makes sense when considering that guitarist Vance is also the only remaining original member, now joined by fellow Abigail Williams members Ken Sorceron and Gabe Sieber. I think this lineup has led to some of their darkest and most grim tunes to date, so much so that I'd honestly consider it more of a black metal album with tech death elements than the other way around. Then we have Godmother with Sinneseld. I absolutely adore this Swedish mathcore band that have been putting out their own Scandinavian twist on the converged sound since 2012. And with this latest EP, they really seem to be on a mission to expand that sound into all of the favorites. From the Dillinger Escape Plan to the very Every Time I Die sounding Big Things Coming, complete with cowbell.
Cowbell, baby.
It may only be 5 songs at just around 8 minutes, but I assure you it's worth every second for its unbridled angst. And if it leaves you wanting more, there are plenty more EPs and full lengths of the same level of quality in their discography to explore. Then we have Nightside with Death from the North. Despite forming all the way back in 1996, Death from the North is only this Finnish band's second full-length album. The tremolo lines here, along with some of the more symphonic elements, give me some early Emperor vibes, and the reverb-heavy production really makes this album sound pretty massive. The songwriting can be a little bit overly familiar, but the execution is very strong, even to the point of feeling like this could be a lost 90s album. Black metal hasn't been wowing me much this year, but I'd say as far as the more traditional stuff goes, this is in the upper tier for me. Then we have Darkness Everywhere with To Conquer Eternal Damnation. Given how disappointed I was with Darkest Hour's new album, this debut from this California Melodeath band really hits the spot. From the vocals to the guitar work, there are some strong similarities to my favorite albums in that band's discography. Right from the title track, I feel like I'm back listening to Undoing Ruin or Deliver Us. Furthermore, I think that these guys lean much more heavily into the At the Gates influences as opposed to the metalcore ones. The amazing riffs and powerful energy are just so infectious. Listening to this truly makes me feel like I can conquer anything. Then we have The Last of Lucy with Godform. This band frequently comes to mind when I think of worst band names, but make no mistake, they know their way around their instruments. This is more excellent technical and progressive death metal in the same vein as The Faceless, The Zenith Passage, and Exocrine. Tracks like Sanguinary, Solace, and Twin Flames are absolutely dizzying in their guitar work in a way that never forgets how to be catchy. I can also hear how their mathcore roots inform their songwriting, and little glimmers of the genre here and there that add a nice little touch of extra flavor. From battering passages of violence to soaring melodic moments, I'd say that this is easily their best work so far. Then we have Necropanther with Oblivion Jones. Hot on the heels of one of my favorite albums of last year, this Denver crew is back with another EP. And while this still brings the same emphasis on riffage from across the realms of blackened thrash, melodic death metal, and classic heavy metal, this one also finds the band trying out a few new surprises. For one, you've got some excellent saxophone additions courtesy of Rico Jones, as on my personal favorite, the Denver School. But each of these 4 tracks also emphasizes a different genre, including an over 11-minute doom track in The Transported Man. Maybe not my favorite thing from them, but it's the last of their solo EPs, as they're calling them, where one band member writes each one, and I always enjoy what they're doing, and I always look forward to a new full length as well in the future. Then we have From Dying Suns with Calamity. This progressive death metal band caught my attention with the retro PS1 cover art, but ultimately won me over with their fun and energetic performances. This is a perfect fusion of the Black Dahlia Murder with Revocation, an album just as capable of getting complex and proggy as fast and thrashy. Tracks like Turn Undead and Claustrophobic in particular really highlight their penchant for endless hooks, biting vocals, and impressive bass work. Not to mention those pace changes on the drums are really going to get you moving in the best possible way. Then we have Cognitive with Abhorrence. The 5th album from this New Jersey band formed in the 2010s, more high-octane technical death metal that feels like a good mix of both old school and modern sentiments. And while every song is great here, personal standouts for me include Lunar's Psychopathy, Ivory Tower, and A Pact Unholy, the latter of which has some cattle decapitation vibes as well. If you've enjoyed albums this year from the likes of Apogean, Exocrine, and The Last of Lucy, chances are you're going to love this one too. I think that the clean vocals on Abhorrence and As the Light Fades could use a little more work, but I do think that just a little bit more polish in this area has a lot of potential to expand their sound too. Then we have Rhapsody of Fire with Challenge the Wind. The song of vengeance is ready to fight darkness tonight. Over 30 years now under the belt of this Italian symphonic power metal band, and with this 15th album they once more proved their worth as one of the most massive sounding bands in the genre. The opening title track alone was enough to sell me on the hour-plus epic. I'm not even much for power metal, but with these ripping guitars, absolutely pristine vocals, and walls of symphonic instruments, who am I to refuse the call? And with all the fun fantasy imagery, it definitely taps into my inner child as someone who was raised on Tolkien pretty much since day one.
Well, maybe it was your song that helped me become a hero. Well, maybe I like that.
Then we have Night Rage with Remains of a Dead World. This is the Melodeath band's 10th album, having formed in Greece 23 years ago. Now based out of Sweden, they are very much following the tenets of that old Gothenburg sound. I enjoyed their previous album, Abyss Rising, but now with producer and former bandmate Fotis Bernardo's help, they really have given these songs the epic mix that they deserve. Fantastic riffing that takes me back to listening to In Flames for the first time in the early 2000s, and a strong vocal performance make this a must-listen for fans of the genre. Easily one of, if not the best, Melodeath album I've heard of the year so far. Then we have Vreedhammer with Godslayer. I've always considered this Norwegian band to be sort of an alternate reality version of Lamb of God if they had leaned into their heavier roots after Ashes of the Wake. And this third album continues to step up their strengths as a dark addition to the groove metal genre. Tracks like The Joker in particular really bring the best of those blues-injected thrash riffs with their own Scandinavian twist. And they aren't without their twists either, with tracks like Godslayer taking a surprise detour into enslaved-sounding territory. I also dig the use of Isan-sounding synth on others like Death Becomes the New Day to keep things interesting. Then we have Unhallowed Deliverance with Of Spectres and Strife.
We wrestle not with flesh and blood, but principalities and powers.
This was an out-of-nowhere request direct from the band, and while I normally cover this stuff in the Best of Bandcamp segments, it managed to find its way here. Craterous mix of modern tech death and deathcore elements with very professional-sounding production. Every member here is bringing their A-game, from the vocals to the crazy drumming and guitar work, but I think frequently it's the bass that steals the show. Lots of bangers here, but special shout out to We Slither, Treatise on the Lowest Form of Man, and Devil in the Basement. Some seriously insane grooves here too that had me thinking of Brand of Sacrifice. And before we get to my final pick, shout out to Bone Carver with new EP Unholy Dissolution. Really sick up-and-coming deathcore crew with some great symphonic flourishes. I would have talked about this more, but I had to record this early because I'm going on vacation probably at the time you're watching this, and so didn't get a chance to hear it in full, but I'm looking forward to doing so. Also, I did not like the new Gatecreeper album. Unfortunately, the vocals in particular really ruined it for me. Some people might accuse people who don't like this album of like, oh, you don't like Melodeath. Like, clearly from this list, I like Melodeath. I covered a few of them right here. But this one, like, the songwriting was okay, and then the vocals were just so grating. And if you go back to the previous album, I feel like they lost some of the kind of like girth of those death vocals, and they just become grating for me here. But I guess it's somewhat ironic then, if my complaint is about vocals, that my favorite metal album of May goes to Knocked Loose with You Won't Go Before You're Supposed To. People in my audience seem to either love or hate this metallic hardcore band's vocals, but I'll go on the record and say that I am down with the arf arf. In my opinion, they give the already pummeling chaos an extra unhinged quality right from the first scream of thirst. And I get why some people don't like it, but me personally, like, I am down for every single scream. Album 3, and they haven't lost an ounce of their intensity, and more great guest appearances too, like the unexpected Poppy collab on Suffocate.
Have you found your grave?
Even the Chris Motionless feature manages to bring the walls down despite bringing back that same corny pre-breakdown lyric that I rolled my eyes at last time. I loved A Different Shade of Blue, but honestly, there are places on this album that may go even harder.
Inconceivable.
Y'all check out this playlist for more of my favorite metal albums of 2024 by month. Stay tuned also for my favorite albums of the year so far. We're already hitting the halfway mark soon, which is crazy to think about. Again, like, subscribe, comment, become a member, but that'll do it for now. Flight of Icarus signing off. I will see you in the trenches.